when you get hired as the social media manager, you're just kind of like, okay, like what do I do now? Hi, my name is Shaylee and welcome to Burnt Toast Online, a channel for in-house social media managers like you. So I've been a social media manager since 2016. I went to school for business. They invited me to their social media management program. So I've been doing it for a long time. And if you can imagine what social media was like in 2016, it's so different from how it is now. I've worked quite a few jobs since then. I've worked for an agency when we had quite a few clients. I've worked for individual businesses as their in-house social media manager. And then I've been freelance twice. I'm currently freelance right now. I think though that one of the biggest questions that new social media managers have is like literally when you get onboarded into your new job, what do you even do after that? Literally, you get hired, what do you do next? So I developed a whole framework for you. This is the framework that I've used for all of my jobs that have really helped me, I think, be successful in my position. Hopefully it helps you too. So it's your first day as the social media manager at a new company. The very first thing I recommend you do is get access to the company's social media channels. This includes username and passwords. I find it most helpful to schedule a meeting with your manager. It could be the marketing manager. It could be just like a literal just general manager, and try to get access to these things because most of these accounts have two-factor authentication now, which means that when you try logging in, then the manager is going to have to approve it through like a text or an email, something like that. You know, we all know about this. Some companies have a tablet that they keep all of this social media information on, so they'll just give you the tablet. I still at this point would recommend getting usernames and passwords because, again, as all of us know, it's really common for accounts to get logged out when we do updates or anything like that. So just try to get usernames, passwords. This might take you a couple hours. It actually takes longer than I think people think. It's just worth doing right away. The second thing that I want you to do is I want you to connect all of those social media accounts that you just logged into to your social media scheduler. So I personally prefer to use Metricool as my social media scheduler. I think it is by far the best one. Maybe I'll make a video about it. Metricool is what I recommend. However, sometimes your company is already using a social media scheduler that they have like a yearly subscription to. Just try to use that one instead. But just go in there, make sure everything's, and it might already be connected. If your company is not using a social media scheduler, get one right away, connect everything. And I find it easiest to do this during that meeting with the manager where you're getting the passwords. Because again, sometimes things can get funky. You get like login attempts, and so the manager needs to approve things from their end. Just do all of this at the same time. If this meeting goes efficiently, I find that it takes 20 to 30 minutes to do all of this. Okay, so then this is kind of where the nitty gritty of the job comes in. And I would say it's time for you to go through like your research phase, right? And there's multiple parts to this research phase. You're going to want to go over your company's old social media strategy. If you are working for a small, even a medium-sized company, I can almost guarantee they're not going to have a social media strategy. I think the only time a company will have a marketing strategy is if they're medium to large. So try to get with the marketing manager, discuss what your previous social media strategy was, if it was working. If you're working for a company that didn't have one, just go ahead, skip this step altogether. Okay. So now we're still in the research phase and I want you to perform a full social media audit. Again, all of these steps in the research phase should take you like honestly a couple of hours each. So when you perform a social media audit, this is basically when you're going through all of your company's social media accounts and literally just looking over everything. I want you to look over posts from the last 6 months, the last year. Look at, if you're on Instagram, look at the stories archive. What has this company been posting on their Instagram stories? Look at DMs, look at comments, look at hashtags, look at everything and just really try to go through and take notes on things that you notice. So the next part of your research phase is I want you to perform a competitor analysis. And this is basically when I always like to ask the manager or the boss, whoever you're talking to, what their top 5 competitors are. Sometimes people will have a list of competitors and sometimes people won't. If your company doesn't have like a list of competitors, maybe just ask them accounts that they like that is also in their niche or their business industry and really try to get a good gauge on what those companies are posting. For example, one of my companies is a Seattle-based meal delivery service, and so one of their competitors would be Factor Meals, also a meal delivery service. And so one thing I did is I went to Factor Meals and I really tried to go through their own accounts. I performed like a mini audit on their accounts, saw how often they were posting, how many comments they were getting, the hashtags they were getting, the types of posts that they were doing. These are all things you're going to write down as well, because the thing is the people that follow Factor are also the people that would maybe work with my company, the Seattle-based meal delivery company. So there's things that we can take from there. So the second to last part of the research phase is you're going to want to really thoroughly understand your company. So really dig into the website, really talk with your manager, talk with the other members of the marketing team, and try to understand thoroughly what are your services, what are your products, when were you established, what are your values, literally everything about the company, because that's going to make you an effective social media manager. Because your goal on social media is you're trying to promote your company, right? I'm not even going to explain that part much because it seems obvious, but some people actually kind of miss this step because they're so embroiled in like the social media strategy side of things. We'll get into that in just a second though. The final part of your social media strategy is industry benchmarks. And basically, it seems kind of like a random step. I think a lot of people skip this step. It's super important though. And basically, you need some sort of understanding of how well you need to be doing or what works for your specific company in your specific industry when it comes to social media. There is a resource for this. I am going to put it in my bio, but Rival IQ and Sprout Social, every year they publish social media benchmarks by industry, 2024 right now. And basically, it just gives you an idea of where your company should be at. So for example, I'm just gonna make this up, but something in these reports might say, hey, companies in the food and drink industry on average post 5 times a week, and their most popular platform is Instagram and TikTok. That information is so helpful. That means that we should probably be focusing on Instagram and TikTok. And there are resources that help you figure these things out. You need to do this because it's going to give you something to work with for a successful social media strategy. This is the big fish of your first month working as a social media manager, and that is developing a social media strategy. Social media strategy is essentially an action plan, a map for getting your company from where they are on social media to where they need to be. It's very important, it should be very detailed. So this part, as a freelancer, this part takes me about 1 whole week to work on. So I don't know how much time you have, but I would suggest really trying to dedicate like a whole week to this as well. Again, it just kind of depends on the company you're working at. A social media strategy is a plan that outlines how a business will use social media to achieve specific goals. I'm just going to read directly from my notes here to explain what should be in this. And I'll make a whole video about a social media strategy. Your social media strategy should include what platforms you're going to use, types of content, so that would be reels, carousels, static posts, content categories, some people say the words pillars or buckets, content categories, content tone and voice, posting frequency, how you'll source data, and then finally you're going to want to define your goals for social media and then match a metric for it. So for example, let's say that your goal is to increase bookings through Instagram. So then the metric you're going to want to measure for that is going to be external link taps. Again, all of these like steps could have their own video, but if you're going to take one thing away from doing a social media strategy, it's define your goals for social media and match a metric to it, because it's going to give you actual data to work with to see how successful you're being. Okay, so the next part of your social media strategy is going to be building out a buyer persona. I usually like to build out 2 or 3. So a buyer persona is literally just like a fictional character that you create that is going to be like the representation of your company's target customer. There is a resource I really like for this. I wrote it, let me see here. HubSpot has a really good tool called Make My Persona. It's free. And basically it just helps you like build out this buyer persona. The reason I think this is important is because when you are creating a social media strategy, the goal is to obviously increase bookings, make sales, promote your product. And it's really helpful to create content specifically aimed at one person as opposed to creating content that's specifically aimed at 1,000 people, because that's possible. So just trying to create personas are going to be really helpful. If you work in a larger company, they might already have these, but this persona should be based off of market research. So for example, my meal delivery service, a lot of our customers are 35 and up. They're doctors, lawyers, nurses. They might have a kid or 2, and really they just need healthy meals on the go, right? So my buyer persona might be, oh my gosh, this is Sarah. She's a nurse. She's a nurse practitioner that lives in Seattle, Washington. She has a teenager that's somewhat self-sufficient. Sarah just needs something to grab for breakfast and lunch on the go as she drops her kid off at school, and she also goes to work. Right, so already this is like quite helpful because now I know, okay, I'm gonna make an Instagram reel that is catered toward Sarah. So I might say something about how convenient our meals are, about how it's literally something that you can stick in a backpack. I can even send it with my teenager on the way to school, so that way they'll have a delicious, healthy meal to have during lunch, and I can just head to work because I don't have a ton of time to meal prep in the morning, right? That's already helpful. Okay, so this is like some new age stuff right here. The final part of your social media strategy should be developing out a keyword library, and you probably have heard of this, but it used to be a hashtag library. The thing is with hashtags is that they're kind of dying out, but not really. So for example, on Instagram, hashtags, like the value of hashtags is it's just not as important anymore, but it is really important over on TikTok. So I like to just say a keyword library. It's really important that you understand the keywords and phrases that people are using to search for your business, because social media itself is acting like a search engine these days. For example, like I said before, I work with a meal delivery service, and one of the most common phrases that people use to search for our meal delivery service is meal prep delivery near me. Again, this is also going to depend on the company you work at. So if you're working in like a medium to large size business, you might have a Google/Facebook ads expert. You might have an SEO specialist that will have this list already because that's literally their job. Oh my gosh, your job is so easy. Literally just message them and ask for it, and they'll send it to you. Now, if you work for a smaller business or a company that doesn't have those jobs, then what I would suggest is using Google Keyword Planner and Answer the Public to find other common phrases your target customer uses. Okay, so now we've moved on. We've done all of the really hard stuff, and now we're gonna get going to the more, like, to me, this is the more fun part of the job. So you're gonna be your weekly and monthly work schedule. I have never gotten a job as a social media manager and had someone like give me a schedule. I had to make it myself. Especially when you do social media, you're juggling a lot of different duties, and so I think this part's gonna be really important. So here's an example of maybe what a work schedule would look like for you. This one's just based off of like a weekly calendar or a weekly schedule. Again, I'm just literally making this up on the fly, but I think having a schedule is going to be really important because it'll help you effectively do all of your tasks. If you don't have a schedule, I find that it's really hard to juggle everything, and then I prioritize one task over another. And bonus points if you meet with your manager and show them this schedule and go over it with them. A good manager will be like, oh, that's awesome. Or hey, Tuesdays, I'd like to do meetings with you instead. Can we swap these days? Trust me, this will make you not only seem more professional, but it'll help your job run a lot smoother overall. It's time to create your content calendar. Now we're getting into the super fun stuff. So I feel like we all know what a content calendar is, but just in case you don't, a content calendar is basically what you use to plan out your social media content for the week, the month, the quarter. I usually like to start far off, so I put all of my important dates for the quarter. So for example, it might be, hey, we're having this promotion in October, so I will write that on my content calendar. We might have a sale in November. I write that on the content calendar for the whole quarter, right? You can meet with your manager or just email them and ask for a list of important dates, because you're going to want to create content promoting all of these things. Next up is you're going to want to plan your content calendar 2 to 4 weeks at a time, and this is literally just sketching out your ideas for the next 2 to 4 weeks. I don't prefer planning things out 4 weeks in advance because I find that trends really start to change around that time and you're just kind of outdated. So I prefer to plan things 2 weeks in advance. So at this point, your manager might want to see your content calendar for approval. There's multiple ways of doing this. I'll make another video about it, but I would just say, hey, send them a link to your Google Sheet, to your Notion calendar, and have them look it over. And if they have any questions, have them email you. Some managers want to do this, some don't, but I would suggest getting approval in some way. Now you're going to want to actually go ahead and create the content, and this could look so many different ways. I would say normally I need to message certain employees to see if they're available to film on certain days. They'll let me know, and I'll try to plan my schedule around that, but say, hey, usually I film on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Are you available on those days? When I say create the content, I mean sourcing the photos, I mean creating the graphics, and I mean filming the actual footage. Now you're going to want to edit everything together. I like to edit things in CapCut for video and then in Canva for photo video, but a lot of people like to use Adobe as well, especially with Canva's rising team prices, but whatever. After that, captions and see, things get easier as it goes on. After that, you're going to want to write captions and hashtags for all of the content that you created. Writing captions is an art in itself, but write the captions, I always like to pick 3 to 5 hashtags per post because Instagram still uses hashtags and TikTok loves hashtags. So still add hashtags even if you feel like you won't use them because it will be helpful later. And after that, you're gonna wanna use your social media scheduler and schedule out all the content. Again, I recommend Metricool, it's really great. So now your social media strategy is done, you've done all of your research, you've filmed all your content, you've scheduled everything, right? Now you're gonna wanna do like your daily tasks. So one of your daily tasks should be social media engagement. I think that this takes around 15 to 60 minutes depending on the company, but I would say you should shoot for 20 to 30 minutes. Social media engagement is basically when you sit down, take your phone, take your computer, take your iPad, respond to DMs, respond to comments, leave comments on other people's accounts, post a couple Instagram stories. You need to be social on social media, so this part of your job is going to be crucial because you're creating a two-way relationship with your followers as opposed to just trying to push things out on them. And then finally, I would say this is the most crucial part of your job because it's going to help you keep your job, is 1 day a month. I want you to set aside time to create a monthly social media analytics report. Being a social media analytics report is going to be a really important part of your job because it justifies what you're doing for the company, and it also just shows the manager that you know what you're doing and shows you how effective your social media strategy is. Even this is even a good thing if you had a bad month, because we know in social media we have good months and we have bad months. I use Metricool to generate a monthly report on the first of the month. So it's September, so on September 1st I got a report for how my clients did in August. I can go through all that information, I summarize it, I'll make a whole video on this, and then I sit down with my manager and I just try to kind of explain the highlights from the month before. So I say, hey manager, we actually did really good last month. It looks like our external link taps were up by 50%. And I noticed that it's because we also posted about 4 more reels than we normally do. So it seems like our audience is really responding well to using Instagram Reels. However, I noticed that our DMs were down. I think that DMs are really good for us because it means people can reach out to us. So I would like to spend more time on Instagram Stories to develop that two-way relationship with people, right? Because now it shows the manager, hey, this girl knows what she's talking about. And then the manager might ask, what do you need from me? It's like, hey, can I pull you aside for 30 minutes next week to film some stuff that we can put on Instagram Stories throughout the month? I would say that this takes, it could take a couple hours to do this. Again, you're the social media manager in this place. It's your job to do it. And so you need to really come from a place of professionalism and trying to help the company succeed. Okay, so that was a lot of information. I really hope that you enjoyed today's video. Again, every company is different, so you may need to do some of these steps or you may not need to do them at all. It might be unnecessary, but in general... So my camera just totally died, but I was gonna say that every company is different. And in general, this framework is going to help you be successful as an in-house social media manager. You might not need to do a couple of these things if you work for a smaller company, but when you move on to a big company, doing all of these steps is going to be super helpful. If you have any questions, please go ahead and leave a comment. It would mean so much to me. I look at all of my comments, so I would love to hear from you. It would also mean the world to me if you hit the subscribe button, because I'm hoping to come out with quite a bit more content for in-house social media managers, because I feel like there's not enough information out there for people like us. The freelancers have everything, which is ironic considering I am a freelancer, but I used to be an in-house social media manager, so this information will be helpful for you. Finally, if you would like more personalized guidance outside of these videos, I actually now offer one-on-one consulting to in-house social media managers. You can do a one-off session or you can do a whole 3-month program. I have the link for that in my caption. All right, I look forward to seeing you in the next video.